name is Jeff Gallup. For those who don't know, I'm a partner with Brendan Fender CPA. CEO Leadership Forums has been in existence since late 2015, and we've been putting on anywhere from 6 to 10 events a year between this location and some other socials that we've been at. And our objective is to bring, business leaders together to kind of commiserate, learn from each other, and learn from the folks that we put in front of them. So this is a really cool topic. We have about 30 people in our group representing 15 companies, CEO Leadership Forums, and the objective is really to connect you to thought leaders and ultimately to the students here. What some folks may know is that over the last 5 years, this organization has raised and committed about $150,000 of scholarship money to students at the college that are involved in the baccalaureate degree programs. We've got a few folks here. My friend Nasser Adayat, Paul Wilder, okay, and I'm about to introduce another friend of mine from Valencia. His name is Jay Galbraith. I got to meet Jay on a bus ride. I think it was to Tallahassee when we were when a group of us, there was about 30 of us that went up there to the Board of Education, and that was the day that the baseball degree, the Bachelor of Applied Sciences and Business and Organizational Leadership, which was literally now it was I think the 4th baccalaureate program that was approved. And so now there's how many students here, Jay? Do you know? Or Vanessa?
2,800.
There's 2,800 students in that from zero. You look at the associate programs, there's, 39 of them? I lost track. But now, folks, if they want to go to UCF, they can, or they can stay right here and take it right through to their senior year and move on. But before you started, I would like to introduce Jay Galbraith, who is Vice President of Public Affairs and Advancement. One of the cool things that Jay just mentioned to me is like, just think of me as a field goal kicker on a football team, because if you miss, you care. But if I don't miss, nobody really knows who he is, but this is a really cool guy. He knows his stuff. All right, Jay.
Our team, like I said, we're kind of like the field goal kickers. No one cares who we are till we miss. And just so you know, what happens on the bus to Tallahassee stays on the bus. So it's great to be here, and it's great to just welcome you. So before I get started, I'm reminded with Nasser in the house of a story, because Nasser and I are kind of like the story. So there's every year in New York, there's the Al Smith Dinner, which is a famous, big, huge charity dinner in New York, honoring Al Smith, the great mayor of New York. And so this is a massive dinner. And one year, the senior senator from New York was the speaker. And so this thing is so big, they have a 3-tiered stage where people sit to eat and then they speak. So the senator's kind of, like he is back here getting ready for dinner and eating, and the server is serving the senator. And he comes and he puts a roll on the bread plate and a pat of butter. And the senator doesn't even look up. He just says, "I'll have 2 pats of butter." And the server says, "No, you get 1 pat of butter." And the senator says, No, I really want 2 pats of butter." So then you get 1 pat of butter. And so finally, the senator kind of looks at him, pulls the glasses down, and says, "You obviously don't know who I am. I'm the senior senator from the state of New York, and I'm the keynote speaker tonight." And the server looked at him and said, "You obviously don't know who I am. I'm the man in charge of the butter." Nasser is in charge of our butter here at Valencia College. He makes everything happen. So thank you, Nasser, for all you do for us. And so let me just give you a context, because I know your comments and your conversations today will be around hybrid work. So we're experiencing the exact same challenges you are at Valencia College with our workforce. So whatever challenges you're having, we are too with our workforce. So about 4,000 employees, number of those are part-time in the context. As you know, we hire a lot of adjunct faculty to help our students because we want that business experience in the classroom. And the same challenges with our teams as it relates to their desire or lack of desire to come back face to face. So we're having to adjust. The biggest challenge, though, in our world is with our students. So let me just give you some real quick context. During the pandemic, we learned to run a 70,000 student college, remote online in 1 week, attempting to not lose that learning experience. But we also know in our world with our students, sometimes our students, because most of our students work, they got life struggles, and so we can't lose them. Because if we lose them, the likelihood that they come back into their educational journey is not like maybe a traditional educational experience. So we did something unique at Valencia College. If we didn't ask our professors to do it, we did it. So the back office staff, we called every single student.
Wow.
And we said, we got them on the phone. We talked to 44,000 students. We got them on the phone and we said, how are you doing? Don't change your educational journey. What do you need? Do you need a hotspot? Do you have Wi-Fi at home? Some of these folks don't have Wi-Fi at home. We sent out thousands of hotspots. Do you have a laptop? No. We sent a laptop. We literally bought 4,000 or 5,000 laptops, and we started sending out laptops. We got rid of the bureaucracy, so it wasn't like we said, we didn't say, here, sign these 14 papers and these legal documents, and we sent them, because, we're like, well, what if we don't get the laptops back? We don't get the laptops back. We cut through all the bureaucracy. So just so you know, we did some polling, and we also helped our students with things like food insecurity. But so just for some context, we found out 40% of our students had serious food insecurity during the pandemic. So it was very impacting on them, and we needed to make sure they were taken care of. So I just wanted to tell you the impact of the pandemic. So what's happening now? The same thing that's happening in the work environment is happening to our students. So what does it look like? So when we went into the pandemic, we were about 20-25% remote. But a lot of that was some of our specialized classes like baseball, etc. Where are we going to end up? We're probably going to end up 50% remote. But what does that look like? We're going to be hybrid. So I think a lot of our classes, in the old days, because I'm looking around the room, I think I'm the oldest person in the room. In the old days, you would have Monday, Wednesday, Friday class, right? Well, I think you now might have a Monday, Friday hybrid on Zoom class and Wednesday in the classroom. So I think what's going to happen is the professors are going to adapt to what kind of the needs and the modes of our students are. So all of that to say, just like you, we're trying to figure it out because we have a responsibility to serve our students where they are. So we have a philosophy at Valencia College that we believe every student can learn under the right conditions. But it's our job to create those conditions. So let me leave you with one cool story that happened last night. So I, like you, I came from industry, so I spent 12 years in the tourism business. I've been in politics for a long time. I've had the privilege of having dinners with governors and presidents, and I've even met a queen. And so the last night was one of the coolest nights of my life. Because we had a student, his name is Travaris, a lot of life challenges. He completed a certificate that we offer in customer service. Travaris doesn't have a home. He figures out a way to make life work for him right now. We found out he was graduating, or we found out he was getting a certificate. He said, hey, do I get to graduate? Well, we hadn't in the past had our certificate students go through graduation. So we're like, okay. So we now let our certificate graduates go to the big graduation. So we graduated. And he said to us, I've never been able to celebrate anything, so I'd like to celebrate. And all I can afford is Golden Corral. So we mentioned this at our foundation board meeting. Last night, Disney hosted a special dinner for him at the Contemporary Hotel with about 6 of us. So we show up, as only Disney can do, and they've got Mickey Mouse special graduation cap. We're in the lobby of Steakhouse 71. They do a toast in front of everyone. And then Disney had arranged literally the entire restaurant. They handed out signs. And when Travaris walked in, it was this massive celebration going to the table. And then literally they said, order all you want, all that stuff. And then literally it was like having dinner with Barack Obama. Because literally the entire night, guests were coming up to him going, congratulations, you did it, what's next? And so what I want to say to you is, because of your involvement with us, we can work with industry like Disney and do those things for our students. So if you ever get jaded in what you do, say in my business of politics, you get jaded. But if you ever get jaded, just think of that story and know that what you're doing, we can change lives in partnership with you every day.
Amen. Little things done in extraordinary ways. Thank you, Valencia Collins. Jay, that was inspiring, really. So I am going to introduce my dear friend, Casey Fernandez of Highland. Casey's going to be moderating for us. He's a pro at it. We have fun with it. And Casey likes to say, he finds ways to help businesses save 60% of their insurance spend with alternative ways to manage their risk. So, Casey, where are you?
Hiding in the shadows.
There he is, my friend Casey Fernandez. I'm gonna move this along here.
Well, while Jeff's doing that, since we're in the risk management business, just so everybody knows, if you haven't identified, there are exits on both sides. And I know it's important to know that those are available if you need it. If you exit out this way, you will be on the 5th floor and have a quick way down. So I would not go out those exits if you have to for some reason. There's exits on both sides. I get to introduce all 6 of the people that are going to be speaking today. We have a great group, and it's a big responsibility. I'm reminded of the time where a gentleman was introduced as the guy who had made $1 billion in the gas business in Oklahoma, and everybody cheered, and we're going to learn all this stuff. And the guy gets up and he goes, well, thanks for the introduction, but not from Oklahoma. I'm from Texas. Texans, how they are. And he's like, and it wasn't in the gas business, it was in the oil business. And I was like, oh, okay. And I didn't make $1 billion, I lost it. So you have to be careful with when you've got introductions and so on. Hey, Sergio. Morning. So the first person, what we're going to do, just to lay of land here, we're going to have 3 people give short presentations on what's going on in the workplace from their perspective. I think it'll be very insightful for everybody. Then we have the pleasure of having 3 CEOs come up and be available to answer questions that you have. We've prepared some, but we would love to address questions you have from the audience. So that's the lay of the land, that's what we're doing today. And we get started with a great presenter, Jessica Wahlberg. Jessica is a partner with the law firm Ford Harrison. If you're not familiar with Ford Harrison, they are a specialty law firm that works simply with labor and employment law. And what's great is, she'll handle things like Me Too claims, Fair Labor Standards Act, labor violations and all that. However, and of course litigation, what I think is cool about Jessica is she also specializes in working with businesses and organizations prior to those things and helping institute proactive measures so that you don't need her for litigation. And I think that's very cool. In addition to that, she also enjoys paddleboarding, which I need to learn how to do because I fall off a lot. And snow skiing and traveling with her husband and 2 daughters. So please help me welcome Jessica Wahlberg.
Thanks, Casey. So I have this mic on here, but I need to use this too. I'm looking at you guys back there in the black shirts. Is that right? Yeah, okay. Oh, they're back here. Okay. Maybe I can set this here, I think. Good morning, everyone. As Casey said, I'm Jessica Wahlberg, and I am a partner at Ford & Harrison. I spend my days giving advice and counsel to people like you about the employer-employee relationship. It's one of the primary things that I do. I am a litigator, but my passion is that, so I enjoy doing that. We have great speakers today. We're going to talk with you about the things that they're experiencing with the clients and organizations that they partner with about the future of the hybrid workforce. So today we're going to have great panelists too. Some of the insight on these issues is really great coming from the CEOs as well. So we're going to go through that. But I am here to talk to you about the challenges that we're seeing with the future of the workplace. So I know that we all are probably having concerns around staffing, supply, legal compliance. Those are all issues that we're all facing. Obviously, legal compliance is very important to me. It's something I counsel on every day, but I know that there are changes that we're all seeing with staffing and supply that are creating operational issues with respect to efficiency and productivity. And so I'm going to kind of touch on that. This is kind of a roadmap of where I'm going to go during my presentation. I also want to talk a little bit about what I'm sure we all know as the Great Resignation. You know, people sort of moving on to different roles in the workplace, and COVID has really jump-started that. But something that actually Nicole brought up to me when we were presenting a couple of months back is flipping this concept. I think most of you may have seen it in the media, but flipping the Great Resignation sort of on its side and referring to it as the Great Reevaluation. So we're seeing a lot of employees wanting to do different things with their careers, or having a different trajectory, or focusing on work-life balance. So with that reevaluation, or whatever you want to call it, a great resignation, a great reevaluation, it's impacting employers from a staffing and operations perspective. And because of that, we need to talk about how to deal with it. So I want to talk about overcoming some of those challenges. And the way I'm going to do that is to focus on some of the basics and foundational concepts, things that I find best practices that are important as you go through those processes. And then a little bit of beyond. What can we do to sort of broaden our horizons to address some of those concerns? So the first thing I'm going to talk about is the relationship between employer and employee, or applicant and employer, at the initial stage of the interview process. So transparency during that process. That is the first time you get the opportunity to meet an applicant, and that kind of sets the stage for the future. So all of you here may not be interviewing every single applicant that comes through the organization, but you're disseminating and setting the example around what your managers and supervisors should be doing in those processes. So I think it's really important to have them setting that stage. So the first thing you want to do in that process is confirming resumes, experience, and education. It seems simple, but since COVID, we have a lot of holes on resumes or time period gaps. I think that we have come to maybe accept those a little more than we may have in the past, but I still think that it's really important to work through with applicants why those things happened, or what they did during those times, and what their experience is. Applicants may be trying to sort of fit into the mold of the role that you've posted online or wherever they applied through. And I think it's important to get an understanding of where their experience lies, and if they really do have the experience necessary for the role that you've posted for. During that process, I always advise my clients to set out clear expectations around the duties and responsibilities. So you want to have a deeper discussion, more than surface level. You want to dig into what they know, what are their tasks at their current role, what experience applies for your organization. If anybody here has heard me speak before, I'm a big proponent of no surprises and documentation, and it's important from a legal perspective because when the lawyers get the case and they're litigating it, they love to have progressive documentation and communication with employees, but it's important for you too because when you're interviewing applicants to come on board with you as employees, you don't want them to misunderstand what the role is going to be when they get there, because that's a surefire way to lead to an employee who doesn't get retained. So no surprises. From the applicant perspective during the interview, You're talking about schedule. You're talking about work from home. You want to address the travel. So you want to go through all of those things. You want to go through whether or not there may be underqualification or overqualification. Another thing we're seeing a lot with COVID is people deciding to make that change with the Great Reevaluation to maybe move to a role that might not make as much money as they made before, or with job tasks that are maybe lesser than what they were doing previously. And I think you may see a lot of applicants, or I know my clients are seeing sometimes overqualified applicants. In the past, I think we would overlook those and say we don't want to hire an overqualified applicant because they may move on quickly. That may not be the case anymore. And so I think really developing around why someone is sitting in the chair across from you, interviewing for the role, is important, because at the end of the day, you want them to be retained and engaged, and you can't really determine that unless you go through these things in the interview process. Demonstrating skills is really important. Asking applicants to talk through why, examples of the types of things that they're doing in the role that they're in now. So not surface level, but if you're hiring an admin, and something that's important for the admin is that they can prioritize, or maybe they need to be a whiz at Excel. I think asking some questions about, how do you handle XYZ type of situation that's specific to the role that they're going to be in, and how do you discharge that job duty right now, really can give you some insight into their performance when they come on board with you. Okay. In addition to the job tasks and responsibilities, we all want to focus on that, but cultural fit is important now probably more than ever. So you want to make sure in the application process that people are fitting with your short and long-term professional goals for the company, for the role, for the applicant, right? And then also the office and team environment. I can't tell you how much maybe that may be overlooked, and it's really, again, important with COVID now, but is the person going to fit in with the team that they're going to be assigned to, or with your culture generally as an office? I can tell you that I have clients who have really robust, personable offices, and then some offices where everybody doesn't go to happy hour after work, and that can really make a difference to someone who's an extrovert, who's looking for that. So I think it's important to discuss those things as well. I think also a lot of times in the application process, we want information from the applicant about how they're going to do a great job for us, right? But I think now more than ever with COVID, we've got a two-way street there. So we have to be explaining to the applicant and allowing them opportunity to develop an understanding of the position and the culture and whether or not that's going to be a fit for them as well. Because if the role's not a fit for them and for you, it's not going to be successful. In fact, I say to applicants that I interview that it is a goal of mine that we have a mutual fit. So I want them to be happy, and I'm explaining these things to you, A, B, and C, because I can imagine that they're important to you, and I want you to understand these things before you might come on board. And if these things are not a fit for you, maybe this isn't a good role for you. And then flexibility, I think, is really becoming important too, that we're adjusting our expectations for the competitive market that we're in. So we want to attract talent, but the fact of the matter is, and Nicole's going to talk a little bit later, and I'm sure she'll mention this from a staffing perspective, everybody's moving very quickly. So you're going to have to hire and make swift decisions, and sometimes maybe you're not going to be able to check every single box. And I'll say examples from my firm. We were really married to people being in the office, and I still think it's so important. I myself have trouble getting away from that, but a lot of people want work from home or a hybrid, and if you're not going to do it, you're going to miss out on the talent. And so you have to find a way to make it work. And so I think that adjusting, whereas maybe being in the office was a top priority 3 years ago, you now have to prioritize the skill level. So does this person have the qualities and knowledge that you need to do the job? And maybe work from home needs to fall a little lower on the list, the importance of that. Now, obviously every company is different. And so maybe being in the office does need to be at the top. But I think acknowledging that you have to have that list of priorities when you're interviewing is really important, because you don't want to miss out on attractive talent because you didn't have that in place and you were fumbling around whether or not you could do hybrid. But in next breath, somebody snapped that person up, okay? So I think I wanted to talk through that. The next thing I'm rolling. Okay. The next thing is communication once employees start. So you've gone through the application process, you've hired this person, what's going to happen next? I have this bullet, the feeling is still mutual. It's true though. You did that give and take through the application process. You need to do it once the employee starts working too. So you transition that to a give and take with the employee once they matriculate into the organization. So clear messaging on expectations, still really important and critical. What are the job duties? What are my responsibilities? What do you expect of me? Performance feedback is crucial. Providing it, employees want to hear that. They want to know, how are they doing? Are they being successful? Where can they provide improvement? So that's really important, but also the flip of receiving it. So it's not just about here's what you did right, here's what you did wrong, bye. It's what do you have to say about the role that you're in? Are you enjoying the role? What types of job tasks and duties do you think maybe we can make some changes to? It's an interactive discussion. So I want to make sure that you all are understanding, again, to the extent that you don't have interaction with every person at the company, that managers and supervisors are being trained on how to have that give and take. Because it's fine to have this as some concept in a front office somewhere, but if managers and supervisors don't understand how to do that or how to identify these things with employees, it gets lost in translation. So I wanted to just touch on a few tools that I've found to be helpful for that communication process, which are obviously performance evaluations. Everybody knows those standard, once a year you do that, fine. Don't rubber stamp those. That's not helpful for anyone, the employee, you, the lawyer, when it turns into litigation. It's really important to take time to go through those every year. Everyone shouldn't have the same score. We want to be giving proper, thoughtful feedback through those processes. And then really informal. Another thing, supervisors and managers, we want to make sure that we're training them on that because it's not just about once a year. And I have so many clients that end up in litigation and the performance eval, well, first of all, could be great and the person was terrible, right? That's very common. But poor performance eval, but by the time the performance eval comes, it's a year into the problem. And the management team is absolutely upset with where things have gone and they're ready to fire, but there was never any feedback. So I think it's very important to make sure that the informal discussions are going on throughout the year to say, here's what you need to improve on, or here's what you're doing great on. Here's my expectation. Let's have a meeting for 10 minutes about what we can do over the next 30 days that I expect of you, putting those things in place. And progressive discipline is a really good way to manage that as well. And again, if you've heard me speak before on the documentation and the progressive discipline, verbal, written, final is your best friend. And it's so true because not only does it allow you to manage the performance and document, but it gives the employee a roadmap of where they're going. If I got a verbal and then I got a written and now I got a final for the same terrible performance, I'm not going to be surprised when you fire me. But if I got a performance eval once and 2 days later you fired me, I'm going to sue you because I don't understand what happened. And a lot of the lawsuits that I end up defending are just that, by the way. I would not say that any employer is intentionally discriminating against someone. Some are, but most are not. And what's happening is that there's something lost in the communication line. And everybody's frustrated when they walk out of that room when someone's been terminated. And I think I have found that employees who have seen the process walk through, it's like, I expected that. I think last time Nicole and I talked, I think I told a story about a client calling me and telling me that they had gone through that process with an employee that I had coached them through the verbal, the written, the final. I wrote up the documents. I said, say these things in the discussion. I gave them talking points. We go through the whole thing over 6, 8, 9 months or whatever. And when they fired the employee, she said, thank you very much. I had a wonderful time working here. I recognize that this is not a fit for me. I mean, that's golden, right? They spent money on up front to work with me through that process, and they took a lot of management time to go through all of that, right? but they didn't have a lawsuit on the back end. And everybody recognized it wasn't working out, and then move on to the next and repair that, on the back end when you re-interview for that role again. Mentoring, it's sort of non-traditional, but a great feedback tool. Everybody wants that nowadays. Lots of people want to have mentoring. We have a particular setup with that at our firm where we match people together with lawyers who are 4 years or younger in their career, and it works wonders to have that, not your direct manager, but someone else in the organization who is there for you to sort of voice your concerns to or get advice on the culture. That's a lot of things, a lot of times in my mentoring relationships, I'm talking about the culture of our firm, right? And what's the right or wrong way to step, and who's in charge, and who are you trying to impress? I mean, these things are important for advancement, and I think that employees really find value in that. And then I wanted to touch quickly on telework feedback platforms, sort of, because we used to be able to walk down the hall and say like, hey, but we can't anymore. So that's changing a lot. And I think, again, on your front line for managers and supervisors, you're really going to need to encourage them to use those platforms like Zoom or Teams or the phone instead of an email to provide feedback to employees. I read a study over the weekend, actually, that talked about how, we all know Teams and Zoom, everybody's using it now, right? And the uptick in use of those platforms, but the amount of non-scheduled Teams or Zoom meetings that last less than 15 minutes has been up. And I think it's really like a recognition around the fact that we're not just transitioning all the meetings we used to have in a boardroom to Teams and Zoom, but we're learning how to interact that way and say, okay, I'm going to pick up the phone and I'm going to ask someone, or by email say like, let's just jump on a Teams like real quick because we have a 10-minute discussion to have and it's better to have it face to face. Let's do that. So I think that's definitely something, again, you want to encourage your frontline supervisors and managers to do that. Okay. So we talked about some of the basics around transparency in the interview process, communication with the employees, but the market is really forcing us to think outside the box and beyond those basics. So I think that those things are really here to stay. I say, the expectations of the next generation were sort of slowly creeping their way into the workforce before COVID, but when COVID hit, it almost forced us to have to fast forward to deal with some of those things that maybe the next generation of worker were interested in having in their life, work-life balance, work from home, whatever they were, but now everybody wants it. And so I think that whether we like it or not, we really have to accept those things much quicker than we may have had to along the lines with other generations of workers who expected things that kind of slowly come into the workforce. We really have to ramp up on this, and I think increased comp is not the answer. That same study I was telling you about, I was reading over the weekend, talked about how that increased comp is really falling below in priorities for employees because they want other things. They want non-traditional things, and it might have been easier previously to say, here's some money. Move up the ladder. You want a senior title? Great. That's what makes you happy? Wonderful. You can throw money at a problem. These other things require thought, planning, structure, implementation of policies and procedures. So those, I think we need to really recognize that. Oh, I skipped one. Okay, so recognizing that we need to add to these basics, I think is important. What can we do? We have to embrace it. We have to brainstorm the types of benefits that we think would be helpful for employees in our organization to keep them engaged and to retain them. And we need to do that with the frontline managers. That may be different for different companies of different size. If you're in tech, if you're in healthcare, it might be different across your teams. Maybe particular teams need particular things to assist with employee engagement. So I think brainstorming those benefits is really important. And I kind of put a list here of the types of changes I have seen in my interactions with my clients that have been relevant for employees right now. And I think the panel would be like a great place to develop this today, to talk through some of the things that different organizations are doing for employee engagement and retention. But I listed here mentoring, Hybrid work from home is so important. Full-time work from home, many people want. And these things obviously require policies and procedures to be put in place. So again, it's a nice concept for the front office, but if you don't have a policy for work from home of how you're going to handle confidentiality and whether or not I can hear your dog barking in the background, or Nicole always says sitting out by the pool on the Zoom or whatever, which, hey, I don't know, maybe that's fine, but the expectations need to be set forth so everybody's on the same page. If you're not doing that, these benefits don't have value. So diversity and inclusion is a huge one. I have multiple clients who have come to me and voiced that they have had staff transition to other organizations because they do not have diversity and inclusion initiatives in place and proper training. I think clients of yours are expecting that. You know, in general, you're having to justify that you're doing that, obviously, or substantiate it. But employees are expecting it too. It's the way of the world. You've got to do it. And I think you lose good talent to not doing it. Structuring upward mobility paths, I think, is really important. There are people who want to move up in the organization. I think it's important to lay out how that happens, have one-on-ones with those individuals. People value that beyond the comp, knowing that you care about their professional development and knowing that their mentor or their manager is helping them get where they need to be. And then obviously something a little non-traditional, alternative career paths. Again, people who are looking for different hours or asynchronous work with the team or whatever. I think you really need to identify where that may be beneficial in your organization and where you can offer those opportunities so you don't lose great talent to someone who says they want to work 30 hours a week, or if they're a lawyer, 50 instead of 70, I don't know. I'm just kidding. But yeah, I think that is something that you have to work through. I had a last little. So I think in some, I could see Casey's over here like, move it along. So in some, I just want everybody to be aware we do have these changing tides. I don't want people to get left behind their competitors because you're not really focusing on these things with your management and executive teams. Accepting that change with obviously a focus on preserving efficiency and productivity, because it's the name of the game. That's how we all survive, and we have to make it work with the staff we have and still be efficient and productive. And then identifying those benefits that are going to motivate your workforce and developing the actual strategies and policies around implementing in your workplace. So that's all I have. I thank you guys so much for having me today. I appreciate it.
So I have the pleasure now of introducing Sandy C. Sandy started C Management over 40 years ago here in Orlando, Florida, and has been working his entire professional life in serving businesses and helping them with HR consulting. That's quite a legacy. So Sandy's organization works with clients nationwide, so it's not just here in Central Florida. And in addition to doing that for his professional career, Sandy also plays the dobro, the guitar, and the banjo. So with that, please welcome the multi-talented Sandy C.
Thank you very much. Thank you. It's so good to be with everybody today. I really appreciate the opportunity to talk with you. So interested in hearing about what's going on at Valencia. I've had the privilege of teaching the humanities at Valencia at some point in the past. And I remember hearing Dr. Sandy Shugart talk. Y'all remember Dr. Shugart when he was here. And he said that anybody, as we were talking about earlier, anybody can learn anything under the right set of circumstances. And so he was talking about that with a group of teachers, and one of the teachers of German stood up and said, Dr. Shugart, German is a very difficult language. And there are some people that just can't learn it. It has long words and sentences, and sometimes the sentence structure is different, and the verbs at the end, and there are just some people that cannot learn to speak German. And Dr. Shugart replied, well, how fortunate for those people that they were not born in Germany. So everybody, we can all learn, and what I want to learn now from Jessica is how to turn this slide thing.
Oh, yeah.
We're doing the roller, Jessica?
Yeah.
Down. Oh. I knew that college education to come in handy. Good. All right, so I'm going to talk with you about personality temperament today. And I want to ask you, have you ever wondered why people act like they do? Why do people behave as they do? Some people who come to work in the morning are just self-starters right out of the gate. They come in, they generate a lot of energy, sometimes nuclear energy, sometimes intimidating energy. They just boom, there they are. Other people are not. They start more deliberately and take it a step at a time. Some people love detailed work. I've got a buddy of mine that's an accountant. How many of you all are accountants here today? A couple of you. I got a buddy of mine that's an accountant. He loves when tax season comes because he loves the Excel spreadsheets and the detail, and he just loves it. Other people don't. Other people want to give the detail to someone else. Why is that the case, I wonder? Some people are people. And I think we have a lot of y'all here today. A person who has never met a stranger, a person that's easy to be around, a person that generates a ton of goodwill and makes you feel good, and loves to be with other people. Why is that the case? Other people prefer to work alone or maybe with a small group and don't like to be in a social setting of any kind. Why is that the case? Some people are quick on the trigger when it comes to making decisions. I bet most of you all are like that because you're CEOs, most of you are. And you want some information, but you don't need all the information. You just need enough information to make a decision. And other people are just really deliberate about that, and they just never feel as if they have enough information to make a decision. Why is that the case? And the answer is that it has to do with something called personality temperament. Now, how many of you all in here have ever taken an assessment, a DISC profile, or one of the others? Good. So you know what I'm talking about, a personality temperament. There are 4 of them, and we each have a dominant personality temperament, but we have degrees of others as well, and that's called our working style. Everybody has it. What I want to say is that all of your employees and all of your candidates for employment all have personality temperaments. We can call it working style at work if we want to. But they're all different from each other, and the extent to which we manage them and make decisions and interact with them has to do with their personality temperament. An example is coming back to work after being gone a long time, working remotely. We have this discussion among so many people because we've been away and now we're coming back, and how do we manage coming back? People come back to work with respect to their personality temperament. We all work in concert with our personality temperament. For example, a person who is a people person, what we call sanguine, I'll talk a bit more about that in a moment, who's a people person will can't wait to get back to work. Wants to come back to the office to be around other people, that get a cup of coffee and tell stories. Sanguines love to tell stories and get close to you and touch. And so those people really want to come back to, you will have no trouble getting those people back into the office. However, people that would prefer to work alone with a small group, I'm not so sure they want to come back this quickly. The perfectionistic personality temperament comes with a very skeptical database. And the perfectionistic wants to make sure things are right, and so that person is going to be a little bit more skeptical about coming back to work. The hard charge in Type A can't wait to get back to work, because the hard charge in Type A wants to come in and start giving orders and tell people what to do to accomplish the goals and objectives that he or she wants to meet. And so what I want to say to you is that one size doesn't fit all when it comes to coming back to work because of this business of personality temperament. You all have a specific personality temperament, and you will work in concert with your personality temperament at work and also out of work. Now, there are 3 things we think about when we consider why people behave as they do at work. Experience and qualifications are very important. Character is very important. Character, Aristotle tells us, is how we act when no one is looking. You can test that out on I-4 during rush hour sometimes when somebody cuts you off. But today we want to talk about personality temperament. And so personality temperament can be measured in a number of different ways. I'm going to talk about the DISC profile today because that's the one that I use. How many of you all use the DISC or have the DISC? Yeah, many of you have. Good. That's the one that I use because I believe it gives good balance, but it's not the only one, and here are some others that you could you could use as well. The predictive index is a very good one. There's something called the personality inventory that's been around a while, but it's pretty good. Personality plus techniques is one of my favorites. That's Florence Littauer out in Los Angeles, mostly from a Christian perspective, but it's very, very good. There are color-coded personality assessments. Are you red or are you blue? There are animal personality assessments. Are you a lion or are you something else? I'm not so sure they're so hot in the workplace, but they're there, and so we should know about them. Myers-Briggs is the Rolls-Royce. It's been around forever, and it's very, very good, but it's very comprehensive, and you got to really devote some time and effort to the Myers-Briggs if you get involved with that. I hope you're discovering Jordan Peterson in your lives. Jordan Peterson has a personality test that you can go online and take, and it's very good as well. And then, of course, there's the DISC profile, about which we're going to be talking today. Now, each of these measures the same characteristics. They just express those characteristics in different ways. This material is mainstream material. It's not hocus pocus. It's mainstream material. It goes all the way back to the 5th century BC to a fellow by the name of Hippocrates, the father of medicine. And so those are some examples of that. Now the DISC uses labels, and they all use labels, but the DISC uses, and incidentally, these are just labels. Don't get hung up on the word. It's just the principle that's more important. Dominance or type A, influence or interpersonal relationships, steadiness, and then conscientious or what I like to call perfectionistic. Not necessarily perfectionist, but perfectionistic tendency. So let's take a look at those characteristics. We all got them. Every single one of us. We have these characteristics, and we're born with them. They don't change the rest of our lives. You can see it when your children are born, your grandchildren are born. They come into this world with a personality temperament, and it doesn't change. They are tendencies, not absolutes, which means that a person that does not like detail can kind of buckle on his shoulder pads and go in there and do the detail, but won't like it very much. So they're tendencies and not absolutes. Here's an important concept. These characteristics, we do not speak of them as being either good or bad. They just are. Sometimes I'll do a DISC on some person, and it will be a low I, which is a low interpersonal skills, and he'll say, "Oh no, man, I must be bad at that." And I always have to say, no, it doesn't have anything to do with good or bad. It's just the way that your personality temperament is. And so we will behave in concert with our personality temperament. And we'll do it at work, which is what we're talking about here today. But y'all will also do it in non-work settings as well. I've had people say to me, well, I'm different at work than I am at home. Belonging. The personality temperament is the same, and you will have it, maybe in a different degree, but your tendencies will be the same in both a work and a non-work settings. And so if we understand our own DISC pattern, and if we understand the personality temperament of our coworkers, it's a lot easier to manage it. That's why when you call up somebody and say, well, I want you to come back to work now, I know we've been remote for a while, but I want you to come back to work now, and you get pushback. Well, the first thing I recommend that you think about is what kind of personality temperament are you dealing with? Because if you're dealing with for example, a personality temperament that is wants to avoid conflict, that person is going to say, I really don't know if I want to come back to work. You've got to talk that through with them and make sure they understand that that's what's going to be happening there. So this requires some effort. It doesn't happen naturally. Let's take a look at understanding the results of this. Somebody said one time there are three kinds of people. There are people that make things happen, there are people that watch things happen, and there are people that say, what happened? so what are you getting when you hire somebody? The DISC helps you look behind the veil. And the DISC is uncannily accurate. So are the others, but I'm talking about the DISC here today. It's uncannily accurate. Many times, most of the time, a person will take the DISC profile and then look at the results, and I will say, well, what do you think? And the person says, man, I can't believe it's nailed me. It's exactly right, except for. And he or she will point out several examples of where he or she thinks that the DISC is not really describing the correct personality temperament. And I will say, go home and ask your wife or husband or friend or whoever, and if you're like that, and the person will go home and come back and say, well, yeah, my wife told me I was exactly like that. And so the reason is that the disc helps us, we see ourselves as we think we are, not necessarily as we are. And so sometimes we have to go outside and get a disc profile and see how we really are. I like to quote Robert Burns here, "Oh, what a power the gifted gifts to see ourselves as others see us. It would from many a blunder free us and foolish notion." And so as far as the disc is concerned, if you can give the disc to your candidates, particularly to your management candidates, and find out, as Jessica says, if it's a good cultural fit in terms of the disc, then you're much more likely to make a good hire. Have you ever hired somebody that you thought, wow, I've really got a good hire here. This is one of the best. I've hit it out of the park on this one. 2 weeks later, you turn around and say, man, where'd that come from? I didn't see that happen. The disc helps you look behind the veil. I call it the Wizard of Oz syndrome. Remember the Wizard of Oz? The Wizard of Oz, people thought he was a wizard on a mountaintop with smoke and fire, but when you got up there, it was an old fella, and he was behind a veil, and he was pulling cables and pulleys and things, and so it wasn't a wizard at all. And so what we can do when we do use a personality assessment is look behind the veil to make sure that what you're getting. I have a client in New York City, a surgery center, and about 3 years ago, they called and said, well, we need a new administrator, and we want to give them the 5 candidates the disc profile. Well, I didn't interview any of the 5 candidates. I just gave the disc profile and read the results and then presented my report back. And the last fellow on the list, I said, you know, I don't know this person, but his disc profile indicates that he's a maverick, that he won't follow protocol, and he makes everybody mad. And they said, oh no, man, this guy's got great experience. He's worked at the hospital here in New York. He knows all these people. We want to hire him. So they hired him. 2 months later, they called me back and said, Sandy, we had to let the fella go. And I said, why'd you have to let him go? He said, well, he was a maverick. He won't stay in the lanes, and he makes everybody mad. And so the disc does not lie. The personality temperament does not lie. And so it helps us to look behind the veil. The 4 characteristics are dominance, or what I call a type A personality, hard charging type A, comes into the office loaded for bear, motivated by accomplishment and achievement. Much we could say about all of these if we had more time. But it's important to know that most managers and executives are hard charging type A's. Most managers and executives are hard charging type A's. Supervisors make good, type A's make good frontline supervisors. In America, 40% of the general population is a type A, but 90% of the executives and managers are type A. So if you're a CEO, executive, or manager, the odds are really good. You got a pretty good dose of type A. Now, the interpersonal skills are people that really like to be around other people, and they're very good at jobs that require interpersonal relationships, things like customer service and things like patient care and customer care, things of that nature. You do not want a hard charging type A in a customer care situation. That's where the disc comes in handy to help us out. And you do not want a people person in an accounting position. Never getting a job done. They're always talking to people. Where are your grandchildren? Who's going to bring the brownies? You know? So the steadiness, whoops, Jessica.
Back the other way.
There you go. Steadiness, yeah. Another term is phlegmatic, like a locomotive, slow to start, slow to stop, but once you get them going, really good. One task at a time, no multitasking for this kind of personality, temperament. Very deliberate decision maker, never feels like he or she has enough information, avoids conflict at all costs. So if you say to this person, what is your opinion of your performance appraisal? What do you think the person would say? Whatever you think is okay with me. Really difficult to get an opinion because that creates conflict, you see. And then the conscientiousness, or as I say, perfectionistic personality temperament. You know, the motto of the high D type A is let's do it now, and let's do it my way. The motto of the perfectionistic is it's got to be right. And there's only one way for it to be right. And if it's not that way, it's
not right. I got a buddy of mine that's a real high perfectionistic, and he takes his suits and he lines them up in his closet and left to right, and they're 2 inches from each other in the closet. And see where you turn the lights on over here, the 2 screws, he lines all his 2 screws up exactly perpendicular. We love to go to his house and unline his screws, and it drives him crazy. Florence Littauer tells the story of she's very, very people person, and her husband was very perfectionistic, and she said one day she wanted to eat some grapes. And so she went to the refrigerator and got a clump of grapes out and started picking this one from here and this one from here, plumpest grape over here, next one plumpest over here. And she noticed her husband was looking at her. And her husband said to her, "Well, you know you're not eating those grapes right." She said, "I didn't know you could eat grapes right or wrong." He said, "Yes, the way you eat grapes is you take a clump of grapes and you start at the bottom and you pick the bottom grape and you work your way up the clump." You say, this is what perfectionistic personality temperaments tend to do. It's got to be right. If it's not that way, it's not right. Those are some things to be thinking about, and the disc itself or one of the others will reveal the degree to which you have a D, I, S, or C in your particular personality temperament. It's not good or bad, it's just the way things are. It's like a guitar string. Too tight, it breaks, and too loose, it doesn't sound very good, but you get it just right, and it sounds really good. These are the goals of a personality temperament assessment: to have a better understanding of your own working style, to leave an understanding of the style of others, and to begin to think in personality assessment terms. So when you meet somebody, you immediately begin to think, oh, this is a people person, this is a type A. You can begin to identify people pretty quickly like that. So this is us. We've been around since 1966. I actually came down here, Casey, in 1981 from Virginia, and you can tell I have a South Brooklyn accent a little bit. And came down here from Virginia, and our firm has been around since 1960. And so we're not attorneys, we're management consultants, and we help with human resources management policy and procedure. And I don't know who this young guy is. Whoever it is needs to get a different picture. But anyway, that's I'm a Virginia Tech guy, and I served 2 years in the U.S. Army in 1968 and 69, and have worked for some other people before I got here. Well, anyway, thank you very much. It's great to be here, and so we'll look forward to it again. Okay. Thanks, Casey.
Thank you. Sandy, as a hard C, I want to thank you for being within 10 seconds of your allotted time.
That's what high D's do, brother.
That makes me feel very good. We have one final presentation. You're going to be excited to hear from Nicole McMurray. Nicole has been in working with businesses and candidates to help successfully place them for over 18 years here in Central Florida, and leads Apple One in this area. What you may not know about her is she's also the adoptive mom of not one, but 2 amazing kids. I think that 2 out of 3 is good, right?
Yeah, my husband said not a third.
Okay, got it. So 2 amazing kids, Luke and Olivia, ages 10 and 9. And in addition to all that, she sings in her church choir and has decided to start learning how to play the piano. Now, I want to dispel one rumor that's been going around here. With Sandy's ability to play the guitar and Nicole's musical ability, they are not going on the road professionally at this time. But she does have some great information for us, so please welcome Nicole McMurray.
Thank you. Thank you guys so much. I appreciate it. I'm a high I, so I promise to be brief, be bold, and be gone, right? And we'll see if some of the details make it on the screen, okay? Here, oops, that's Sandy. That's an example of me not knowing what to do. This just goes this way. Okay, so Jessica and I love learning from her. Sandy, I've learned so much from you in the time that we've met and been together. I am here to help you with tools to make things happen. So I've been with Apple One for 18 years. I am the street version of what we get to leave with today, right? And I wanted to share with you guys, it was on your little pamphlet when you signed up for this event, but the quote from Scott Sonnenschein, where he just says, he's the author of a book, Stretch, which I'm reading right now, and it says, if you think you're leading the same workforce, people with the same mindset, the same mentality, you're nuts. You have to change or get out of the way. There's no turning back. This is the big reset, and this is where hope and opportunity live. So today I want to sit in that space where hope and opportunity live, because I promise you guys, the great resignation, the great reassignment, the great evaluation, there are still clients that are hiring people every day, and there are still people that are driving to work every single day. And if you're sad or defeated, just sit on I-4 at 8 a.m. and you'll get motivated to know that there's candidates out there in the marketplace, right? Just wave in the car. Okay, so we'll make this happen together. All right, so Jeff, will this just move to like the little animation thing? Will it just kind of happen, or do I have to roll for everyone? Okay, got it. All right, so I want to talk about the future of work right now, okay? We keep hearing that there's no people out there, there's no candidates available in the marketplace, and right, we're in a different world and the world has changed. But if we're going to look where hope and opportunity live, I just want to talk about the future of work for a second. Gen Z, right now, it only makes up about 5% of the workforce, and there's 61 million Gen Zers that are getting ready to join in the future. If you don't know about Gen Z, and I can spend hours talking to you about it, they are one of my favorite generations that are coming through the marketplace. My last 2 hires were Gen Zs, and they are level 10 off the charts amazing, right? They have great personalities, work ethic. If you are not excited about Gen Z, I want you to leave here today excited about it, because the future of work is coming your way and you are going to love them. All right, so let's take a look at what this looks like. This is different generations in the workplace. And as we're building our story, you know, Jessica talks about performance management, all those things. Sandy talks about hiring. You can't do any of it if you don't have the people, right? You can't do any of it if you're not being thoughtful about attracting talent and attracting the future of work. So in this chart, when I put it up here, okay, you probably automatically look at yourself, right? That's what we tend to do in a picture. We look at ourselves in the photo, and if it's good, then we post it, even if your friend's eyes are closed, right? So in this situation, you look at yourself, but what I want you to look at is the future of work. So let's just spend a second here, and you guys, anything that you need today, I can send this all to you. So I know we're taking pictures, but if you just give me your business card, I'll send it and make sure that you have it. So Gen Z, for example, values, right, in the workplace, authenticity and equality. They focus on social responsibility and stability. So we're talking about this. Our millennial generation had a lot of transition. The Gen Zs saw that, and so they now are more focused on stability. They're called the gig economy, right? So you see Uber Eats, like I can create my own schedule, but I'm still working for a large company that's somewhat stable. So if you can master this as an organization and look at the future of work, you're gonna be able to draw in this talent, beat out your competition, and be ahead of the game when it comes to staffing your team, okay? Workplace view and authority, respect is earned, work is time for work, work-life harmony, right? My responsibility development. You're gonna see that Gen Z wants that face-to-face interaction. So all those things that Jessica were talking about, performance reviews, making sure your managers know how to do that. If you're not setting time aside in the workplace, you're going to miss out, and the candidates are gonna join your team, and then they're gonna leave because you're not providing them the things that they need to stay a part of your organization. Okay, so the millennials are on there too, right? And we've all had experience with the millennial generation, baby boomers, right? Gen X. No matter what your opinion is, each one of these generations has had an impact on the marketplace. So whether you like it or not, they've made an impact on your world. So in some way, we have to learn to like it, love it, and accept it. Well, you don't have to love it, but you can accept it. Okay? So at Apple One, we always say that data closes deals, adjectives don't, right? I don't want to hear that you're a people person, bleh, like none of it. So data, what does that look like for us right now? So when we hear Jessica say money's not everything, I wanted to share this study with you. You guys can see right at the bottom, it's 14,000 Gen Zers, 8,500 millennials. But just take a look at why people are staying in their current organization, right? Good life-work balance, that's 39%. Now, as a baby boomer, right, you might define life-work balance different than a Gen Z. So make sure you're talking about that and asking the questions so it's data in the workplace. What is a good life-work balance to you? Describe that. And if you're asking the question, please be open to listen to the answer, right, and process what they're saying. But you can see here, this is what our candidates are looking for. So if we're talking about the future of work, if we're talking about the hybrid workplace, it's not just salary, it's making sure that we have opportunities to progress and grow, right? Driving a sense of meaning from my work. That's really important. Let's get to that in the interview so we can spend time with our candidates. Unemployment's 3.6%. We know that it's hard out there. There are 5.4 million more job postings than there are unemployed persons. So what does that mean to you? We can talk about how hard it is out there. We can talk about how nobody wants to work anymore. We can talk about all the things that the news are saying. Or we can decide that we are going to attract different candidates in the marketplace, and we are going to get better as a company, because that's where hope and opportunity live. And just have a moment of silence for the way things were, right? Just grieve it, because it's gone. So the more you talk about it, it's not going to change it, and your competition is going to beat you to the best people because they're getting better. I want you to ask yourself the question, are you worth changing for, right? If you were to meet somebody in the grocery store today, if you were to meet them at Publix, is your company, are the things you're doing, are you worth changing for? And if you can't answer that question, then we have to reevaluate, right, what we're doing as an organization. And we're going to learn from some great CEOs today. Okay, tools to make things happen. If you guys need any of these, I'll email them to you. They're all on our website too. They're all open source. But so many times we have a job opening and then we just pull out a job description and we're like, okay, HR, get out the bullet points and we're going to put this online because we have an opening. But when was the last time that you evaluated what the needs are in the marketplace? We saw what our candidates with the future of work is looking for. We all know this chart if you took any sociology class, right? And so we want to look at a level 1 foundational need candidate, right? In that case, we do want to evaluate pay, benefits. In a call center environment, will candidates move for 50 cents? Absolutely. We see it every single day, right? So that customer service certificate, we better be willing to pay that candidate and make them a part of our team. Level 2, sense of belonging, career development, right? Things managers must provide to create engagement in their employees. We have to make sure that we have strong engagement plans. We're looking at that mid-level candidate, right? So when you're placing an ad, when you're doing things to attract talent, if the bullet points are not saying, hey, this is a place where you can make a difference. This is a place where you can lock arms, where you'll have an impact with our CEO, where your voice is heard, right? Where you matter. Whatever those things are, when I'm reading your ad, when I'm looking at changing to your organization, are you worth changing for? And if you are, do people know it? And then level 3, right? Like, I've been at Apple One for 18 years. So I want to be in an environment right now where I can make an impact. That's important to me. Again, are you looking at the needs of the employees that you have and making sure that you're managing and leading towards that? If you've ever worked with me before, or I've ever, if you've been at any presentation, this is so important to me, is meeting with your team to define what you're looking for, okay? So, again, opening on our team, do we know what it looks like to hire for this specific position, okay? Have I sat down with Sandy and said, okay, what is the area of the most turnover right now? What are the must-haves in the next candidate? Are we looking for a D? What does that look like for us and our team, right? What are the characteristics and traits? What's the makeup of our organization right now? What does our team look like? How would you describe it? So if I was in a team planning right now and we were looking to hire, Jessica, what's important to our group? For us, hiring new talent, if you're a corporate recruiter, it doesn't really translate into what we do, okay? So we know that as a team, we normally won't pull over somebody with a corporate recruiting background. We know somebody, if we're gonna bring them through an apprenticeship program, maybe we take them from Target or some type of hospitality. We've decided that as a group because we know what will work and what doesn't work too. I've said this before, when you're dating, you make that list, right? Of like everything you want in the perfect person. So when you meet them, you're like, oh my gosh, you're the perfect person, right? Or so you say. And then you can marry them, right? Because it's on the list, you know that. So for our employees, Jessica talked about this, making quick hires. If we know what we're looking for, then we can do that really quickly, right? If we've met as a team, if we set that strategy. So tools you can use now, do that. Leave here today, go meet with your team. I love it, okay? Benchmarking. Again, we hear this word culture, and it's such a nebulous word, right? I've talked to clients before, and they're like, we have a really Google-like environment. We have cereal. I'm like, that means you shop at Publix. That does not mean you have a Google-like environment, right? So I know I've shared this before. I had a client actually, when I asked them about their benefits, they said, we have a Keurig. Okay. So in these situations, we want to make sure. Now, does everybody need a pool table and shots at 5? No. But have you defined what your team, what your narrative is, so you know how to attract the best people? If we're an outgoing and energetic environment, what does that mean? What does that mean for you as a group? Have you talked about that? Does that mean we party at 5? Or if you're in a library, does that mean that we don't close all the books at night and we're crazy, right? Like, what does that mean for your team environment? Define that as a group. Make sure all of your leaders and all of your managers have that same strategic narrative. So when the candidate walks through the door, you are able to make that hire, right? Lauren's here. She's the manager of my Orlando team. I know when a candidate interviews with Lauren, they're going to hear the same thing that they hear from me, right? We know how to describe our team, what it looks like, and then we're able to execute on those decisions, okay? This is another tool that if you ever need, but if not, craft your own, right? Do it for the candidate too. Jessica talked about this, preparing interviews, asking these questions. If a candidate says, I'm really fun, well, describe fun, right? I don't want to fill in that detail for you. So you tell me what that looks like. You tell me about a time, the last time you had to complete a project and what those percentages were, and have them define it. And awkward silence is okay in the interview, right? Because trust me, the people sometimes that we make offers to, it'll be crazy. Jessica and I, we've talked about that a lot. So, okay, here's one thing that is really important, and this is super different. I've been adding this to every single narrative with a client. We just worked with a company on this, but mapping out your career path. So for example, this is a real letter that I just gave to somebody on my team. She just got promoted to an executive account manager. And the greatest part is the minute I promote you at Apple One, I look you in the eyes and I say to you, here's the goal letter for your next position. I want that rocking chair mentality that you're gonna grow old with me. And so the minute your career path is mapped out and we have different avenues for you to go down, but the minute that you sit with me, I'm already talking to you about your next promotion, but the ownership is going to you too, right? It's not only up to me. I want you to know that these are the things that I need you to meet in order to get here. And when you hit one or two of them, come talk to me, because then we can get excited about that next step and what it looks like for you. If you do not have a goal letter for your team, I would recommend get that done for your people. We saw on that chart that upward mobility is important, right? People want a place where they feel valued and cared for. We saw that. We saw the Deloitte data, right? We know these things. This is an actionable item that you can immediately do to change the face of your company, okay? So here, it's mapping out your career path. We have career path goals, performance, results, trainings, qualities, participation. We sign off on it together. It is a measurable activity that I care about your future with us. So when a recruiter calls somebody on my team, right, and I get headhunted out too, don't worry, it happens to all of us. If they just sign this letter and they know that their future's there, we can work on it together, okay? Oh, and I just wrote just a couple questions there, right? Is there a way for them to take ownership? When was the last time you promoted something? When I talk to a company, sometimes, or a candidate, if I'm on the phone with you and you let me know, right, I'm happy in my job, I just want to find out when the last time somebody was promoted on your team, or when was the last time that your boss said something really great to you or cared for you? And if you can't answer that, then you might step out in the hallway and take my call, right? So make sure that you're loving people in the way that if that call comes in, it'll go right to voicemail. Okay, employee recognition plan. If I've ever worked with you in any way or you ever needed this, this is something that we want to make sure we establish as a team. We talk about the value, we talk about encouragement, and everything doesn't have to be money. It doesn't always have to be an Amazon gift card, right? We've had it before in our office where we've had a competition and somebody writes a poem or a rap about somebody, right? Wouldn't that be great if your CEO came in and did a rap about you? I mean, that'd be pretty funny for the team. So think outside of the box. It doesn't always have to be a gift card to Amazon, right? Spend time with your people. Ask them. If you have a birthday, do you like to celebrate it, right? I had somebody who didn't like their birthday celebrated. And so we want to care for somebody at that level. I think there was just a lawsuit where a guy sued because somebody celebrated his birthday, right? And he didn't want it to happen. So what? Okay, ask the question. We know this now, right? Interest and priorities, recognition and ideas. And then as a team, what is worth recognizing, right? In the heart of the pandemic, when my team was transitioning and putting 3,000 people to the work for the state of Florida, there were days where we just celebrated showing up, right? Because we had to. And so what does that look like? Controlling rest for your team, okay? Stay interviews, making sure you have a plan. I know I just have a few minutes, but again, it takes so long to attract talent. It costs so much money to place ads, to recruit, to pay your recruiter on your staff to find people. And then they get there, right? And all of a sudden, all the magic's gone. Don't let that happen. Be the person to stay worth changing for, right? So make sure that you have stay interviews in place, asking people, checking in, those face-to-face interactions, the best work of your life here, defining your environment, making sure that there's clear expectations on people. If it's a work from home environment, when I message you on Teams, the expectation is that you would respond within 15 minutes, right? You don't have to commute from your kitchen to your computer. You can do it. I believe in you, okay? And then of course, quality is the best business plan. So we hear these things, we know they're important, but then we get back to the chaos of our day and we ignore them. if we're not paying attention to the way that we hire and perfecting the way that as a company we are deciding, are we worth changing for? So when someone walks through the door, they hear that messaging, then we're gonna miss out on the best talent in the workplace. We're gonna miss out on the future generation that's getting ready to come through, right? I think the cutoff age for Gen Z is 2012, right? So my son is like 10 years old, so we got another 8 years to prep for these people coming through. So get ready for it. Okay, that's it. All right.
We have the opportunity for all of you to interact with this amazing panel, and I want to open it up for questions that we may have that folks have been sitting there saying, all right, I wanted to ask this about that. What questions are from the audience? Let me start out with one. If your company has staff working from home, what are the challenges that have presented themselves with managing work from home workforce or hybrid workforce? Gentlemen? Anybody?
Sure, I'll take that one. So we, right now, we have a very small work from home contingent. So we are basically the DMV. And so when you think about what happens at the DMV, that's what we do. A lot of it is very paper-based transactions. But we have started with, we have about 3 or 4 employees now that are fully work from home. And so some of the considerations that come with that is we deal with your driver's licenses, your social security numbers, your birth dates, your addresses, all of the good information that you could possibly turn over to the DMV. Our clerks, just as a natural course of their business, have to have access to that information. And so one of the big considerations that we had to take into account is how do we ensure the security of that information at home? How do we make sure that that our processes, right, and access to all that information is robust to make sure that it's secure. So that's kind of one of the challenges. One of the things I will say is moving forward. So I said, we have 4 or 5 employees right now. It was mentioned, one of the speakers mentioned that they see the whole world, the whole whatever, coming to about 50%. And that's actually what our organizational goal is 50% of work from home. One of the government agencies, interestingly, we saw some innovation in government. I don't mean that in a but they have created a virtual clerk. So you walk into a DMV office and there's a computer screen there with somebody's smiling face on it. And so you don't actually get to interact with that person. That person is working somewhere else remotely. And so there's all kinds of ancillary benefits that come from a program like that. And so that's something that we're hoping to bring into our organization. We've already started piloting it, working on the technology to kind of overcome that. But that then frees us up to allow our employees to work from home, to work from another location, and then most importantly, it gives us the flexibility. We have locations across the state. If I need to move an employee from one location out in Brevard County to another location down in the Four Corners, normally that'd be about a 2.5-hour drive, 3 hours if you get in traffic, but I can do that in about 60 seconds with this new thing. And so that gives our company a lot more flexibility to be able to do that.
So cool.
Thank you. Thank you. And if you have a question, just raise your hand. I'll call on you. Yes, ma'am.
Hi, Karen Rebel. Hi, Mary. CEO of Junior Achievement. And I have a question regarding remote work in other states. If someone's choosing to go on vacation and they're like, I'd really like to be with my family for a month and I'm going to work remote for 2 weeks. And I know certain states have different laws. And where, do you say, oh, if you go to Georgia, you can, but you go to Michigan, nope. Like, how do you balance the state issues of remote work when it's not employer required?
I feel like you're the right one to take this. Yeah.
I can take that. So this is it's a challenge. I don't necessarily tell my clients that I'm not okay with somebody working remotely for a short period of time, like 2 weeks, a month, whatever. I don't love anything happening in California and New York if you don't have to. If you're already there, obviously, right? But so if somebody's saying that, I don't know, if somebody's going to go on a 2-week vacation, they're going to do a little bit of work there, I think that's fine. But anybody who's wanting, I have clients who went remote during the pandemic and then had people say like, well, I've been working from Minnesota and we had no idea, right? So when that started to happen or trickle down in my practice, we started to develop tools around moving those people to those places, which are not just move those people to those places and it's easy. I mean, if someone wants to work in Minnesota and you don't have operations in Minnesota, it has to be a real consideration. You're right. The laws around the requirements of things that you need to give employees in those states are sometimes unclear because these laws were not written for these situations. Like, laws around family medical leave that may apply in California or New York, sometimes they're unclear as to whether they apply to someone who has a home location in Orlando and is working from their house now in New York. So it becomes this like, well, there's not case law on that. The statute is not very clear. Now you're left deciding which law are you going to comply with. So I have worked with clients to sort of develop out tools for each different state to say, okay, if you're going to move this person to Minnesota, here's the 20 laws that you need to comply with when they're there. So I think you have to tell employees if they're wanting to relocate to a state where you don't already have operations, it has to be a discussion, it has to be approved, and I would recommend that you work with counsel to build out what those requirements are so you can decide what to do.
Yeah, and I was more asking, like, if someone says, I'm gonna work remote for a month.
I think that's fine. I don't, but I mean, I think there's other considerations there that, you know, just because a person is work from home doesn't necessarily mean that means you can go wherever you want to work. So I think, you know, logistically, we're gonna, you know, you have things in place around confidentiality and operations and things like that. And I think if you have someone somewhere else for long periods of time, you know, you could end up with a workers' comp claim.
Right.
So I don't know if I would encourage that.
I'm just curious, like, does anyone else facing that? Like, hey, I'm gonna work for a month from X, Y, Z.
And
There's
if
a
it's an
huge
hourly
push
rate,
for the
you don't know
nomad
whether they're working
lifestyle,
or not,
right?
so
Right.
you end up with them.
Have you seen any federal documentation?
So that everybody can hear you, what is your, you
Well, there's
mentioned
a-
about the nomad lifestyle?
So there's a huge push into the nomad lifestyle, so I didn't know if you'd seen any federal legislation that's changed or any writing that's changed for,
No.
I have a moving office or roving office. or-
Yeah, this is very slow. These things are very slow
Right.
to develop, right? So I think eventually we may see states put in to enact laws around these particular situations where I just said, like, you don't know what law to apply. They're going to get smart eventually and start, you know, amending those statutes or making new ones to address these concerns. But right now, I'm not aware of anything that would say you could be here or be there and what law would particularly apply. We're just going through and applying the law in each of those states. But I see this concern
There's
and
a tax implication.
Right.
yeah, yes.
Lauren, did you have-
Yes.
One day there, I'm obligated now to pay taxes.
That's right. So you not only have a legal issue from an employment perspective, and I'm not a tax lawyer, but you are right about that. If someone is working in another state, you do have to pay taxes there. So that's a whole other issue. I wouldn't encourage this. If you're going on vacation, you're going on vacation. We do work-life balance, right? So go on vacation. Don't be working remotely like that. I'm not a fan of that.
Would you recommend putting it in your policy too, like
Yes.
in your work from home policy? So
That you're at where you say
Yeah.
you're going to be,
Yeah.
in your house.
Okay, yes, ma'am?
Melissa Morris, Jobs Partnership. So along these same lines, offering flexibility in the workplace. Say an employee has a sick mother that's in Michigan and you're allowing them, or a dying parent that's in another state. I work with a very small organization, but we've had both of those things come up where someone needs to go away for 2 weeks in another state and they still want to be able to work, specifically with dying parents, because you don't know when that's going to happen. So they want to use as much time as, they want to use as little time as they can, you know, because they need to save time. So how do you function around situations like that?
Operationally or legally?
Legally.
Yeah,
I mean,
think,
operationally, we like struggle along and make it work. but-
yeah. I think you have to be careful because, again, the different laws apply in different places. I think 2 weeks is a reasonable time frame from an employment standpoint. I don't think you're going to be tagged with many of those laws. I think there are tax implications I really can't speak to. But as far as like, do you have to comply with wage and hour laws in Minnesota because someone's there for 2 weeks? I don't think so. Prolonged periods of time, I think you have to be having different conversations around, we can't do that. We can't accommodate that. That's a leave of absence now, right? So I think it really has to make sense for your organization.
Craig?
All right, so if we go back pre-pandemic, you know, pretty much everybody had employees, all the restaurants, the service stations, whatever, fill in the blank. We go through the pandemic, they tell us unemployment's at 3 point whatever %. People have moved into the state, yet nobody has staffing. Where did everybody go? How are these people paying their bills? Legitimately, where did they go?
Yeah, so I can share, you know, a huge transition for us was the increase in unemployment in the state of Florida. So we lost a huge amount of candidates. I know this is crazy. Some of our younger generation, we were hearing that they were taking the unemployment money and trading it in the stock market to earn income. So that's just like one example, right? And so I think for us, this huge population of workers transitioned into the unemployment. And then when we had to reintroduce them into the marketplace, right? I don't know every situation what happened in their family dynamic, but maybe their spouse got a job with a huge increased wage and now there's only one person working in the home. So, Jeff, go on.
Just to that same question, I'd like to ask our three CEOs here.
Sure.
How many new people have been introduced to your company that fall into that category? And what did you do, or let's say, what did you ask, one, to, when they were being interviewed, why the gap, okay? And how many new people came in, not just from other jobs, but from this dormant time that they had?
Or who did you lose? Like, did you lose people to, right, Jeff, I think that goes along with your
Well,
question.
that too.
Yeah.
Correct. And I know, Sergey, you got to say that.
Yeah, I mean, I have a, sorry, not serious, I have a question, a lot, like, basic on the white collar, blue collar difference that perhaps that the industries are facing. So they work in construction. I was talking to some people here. We've been very fortunate that we actually increased our people. We went from 100 employees to 150 in the past 12 months. Now, it's the, again, a lot of the blue collar aspect of it has been driving the force. I mean, a lot of construction based. What's hard right now for us is kind of like the supervisor, superintendent, a little higher, the higher you go, those are people that are easily kind of changing and they're getting, for example, we had a discussion with the president saying that one of our superintendents got another job making around like 10 grand more by doing way less. So that has been a struggle. However, on the, I guess the quote unquote, more specific skills and I guess the entry level stuff, what we've been finding was that the first thing we did, and again, it's retroactively, we made sure that whoever was in house, they stayed in house. So we, like a lot of increases in rates. Now, again, we're a family owned business, so we kind of answer to ourselves and we take the risk on ourselves. Huge risk. I mean, like it doesn't look pretty at times on the bottom line, but it's definitely, the method is working right now. I mean, our rates are going up in different services. So that's one thing we did. The second thing we did, I mean, I don't sound like, first of all, but immigrants. Like, I mean, it is what it is. Like, a lot of diversity has been definitely moving our meter up. So the more, I mean, again, we're Colombian, so it was easier on us to had a lot of Hispanic-based employees. They feel more relation to us, but definitely the diversity route was helpful. And then the third one is go younger. Like, I mean, every single day, like the pool of before we were having like around, and there's some people here that know our industry and our company, so the pool of people was around like 45 to 55. The past 2 months, under 35.
So
Like,
what
I mean,
what I
really.
hear you saying is the three things you've done: you've paid more for internal people,
Yeah.
you've broadened your search to not just, hey, you're a resident of Florida and you were born and grown up here, it's the whole world, and then you're looking for the Gen Zs and millennials as well to bring in. So do you have a question for the group?
The question is mostly about like, how do you, so the struggle right now is that pace of people that are not, like everybody's supervisor and above, they want to do way less for way more money.
Yeah.
And I take the consideration, you know, like and I think Nicole, when you put the different levels, that kind of opened my mind that, oh, there's different levels of, you know, what you're supposed to do. But everybody above one, that is where we're having a lot of trouble with.
Like, how do you?
I think our CEO
Gentlemen,
is
do you
his.
guys, Larry, Johnny, Andrew, do you guys have a comment about that?
I can definitely tackle that one. So the dynamics of our company are that we've been growing dramatically over the last 2 years. And so we created a lot of new roles at the senior level that we did not have before. And so the pandemic put a lot of people out of work. And that then provided for us a pool of candidates that we could then fill those positions with. So that was kind of what happened a year and a half to a year ago. More recently, we've been competing with people who are willing, to your point, exactly, we've been struggling very much with this, people who are willing to pay more for less work than what we were offering. And so we had the internal discussion, should we just increase pay kind of across the board and offer an extra $10,000, $20,000 to try and go after that talent. But the tack that we have taken, and it is yet to be determined if this is going to play out in the long run, is to really focus on the company culture, right? We are selling a vision and a dream, right? Where nobody gets excited about, man, I'm going to go work at the DMV, right? But we're really trying to revolutionize the industry. We're really trying to set a new standard about what it means to be a company in this space. And so when you have that conversation with somebody, when you talk about what that is, what the vision of the company is, what we're trying to do, you get a certain type of person that's interested in that, that wants to be a part of that. And those are the people that we attract. It's a much slower pace, right, than where we were before pre-pandemic. You put a job post and you get 10 candidates before the end of the day. So it's a much slower pace than that. But what I hope plays out in the long run is that the people that we're getting right now want to stay with us longer. They want to see it through to the end. They want to see kind of what that vision grows into. I have no idea if it's going to
Hang on a second, Johnny.
Yeah,
you
I just
want
want
to
to, yeah, we talked about the great reevaluation previously, and you have to understand that at any stage, your employees right now are in some thought process of what are my options, and they're exploring that. And you have to understand that we're positioning our brand and our cultures in a way that's going to help support how they evaluate us from the outside and the inside. So we have to think about preservation and retention, because the competitive landscape is much different, right? All over the nation, all over the world, potentially being able to attract, offer salaries that are doing less work, and it's just a completely different environment. And frankly, there's no map, right? There's no roadmap on exactly how to go through this. We're going through this as we, learn and evolve. But we have to stay competitive. We have to look at ways that we could, increase our benefits, compete with these, benefits past just the compensation in creative ways that we learned about. We have a lot, culture is very big for us. We're a creative agency, so it's very much high touch environment. And so us being hybrid, we do 2 days in office, 3 days remote, right? And that works for us. But every industry and business is unique. Really, the rule of thumb when studying this that I've seen in terms of the hybrid environment is how interdependent are we to work with one another, right? Am I a CPA that I can just stay in my zone and do my part and I really don't have much interaction? Or does my content team and my design team need to really interact a lot, right? And having that touch point to figure out really how to structure the recipe of, how many days in versus how many days out. But, the reality is staying competitive and understanding how they're evaluating your business. Are you investing in your website? Are you keeping your brand in a professional setting that inspires people to, that they admire and they're proud to be a part of? It's things like that that we have to think about that aren't just related to pay and comp.
That's a great point. And Larry, some of you may not know, Evoke Advertising, as well as Highland, was named in OBJ's best places to work. So Larry, obviously that speaks well of the culture that you have set up. And both Johnny and Andrew alluded to giving them a compelling place to go. What have you done to create that in Evoke?
We're on the struggle bus, just like you guys are. We're in the blender. You know, we try to create an office that is, you know, the American Express Centurion Lounge of offices. I mean, we want someone to want to come to the office, not have to come to the office. But, and people want to work remotely. And if you go, you talk about pre-pandemic stuff. So the thing is, as an advertising agency in Central Florida, we shoot for a billable rate of around $135 to $155 an hour, right? Average. So I compete against Push, Ambar, things like that, right? And they have about similar rates. And we go after bigger companies that are typically in Atlanta, Chicago, New York. We go after the larger companies outside of market, and they can get down and pay me $135, $155 an hour, because in Chicago and New York, they're charging $285, $325 an hour. So I'm a discount. I got creative people, right? And that's kind of how we built our business. Problem is now with COVID, all my people can work remote. And the agencies in Chicago, Atlanta, New York, whatever, are grabbing my people. And they're grabbing my people, and they can pay them $20,000 a year more than I can pay them. And they still save $60,000 on the back end. And so they're snatching up on them. So where do I go to find people? It's tough. It really is tough, because I think that you have to create a culture and environment where that's what you're looking for. It starts also when they talk about, you know, in the beginning stages. One of the things that we do is when we post an ad, we're very, very transparent yet, right? So I'm looking for a new traffic production manager. It will say in the job description, are you willing to bust your ass, you know, 40 hours a week and be so tired at the job that you only got 15 minutes a day to commensurate with your fellow employees that also only got 15 minutes, but you're gonna get to do great work. You know, and we like really, really like set a true understanding of what it's gonna take to work here. And we're gonna get those people that apply. One of the things when people do come in to offer to look at our agency to work, we don't, and we're all guilty of this, I think. We look at a resume and we're looking for reasons not to hire that person. We have in our idea of like who we want, right? We want 3 to 5 years of this, 4 to 5 years of this, and we start looking at the resume and going, nope, they don't have that, they don't have that, they don't have that, they don't have that. You should change that, and you should start looking for reasons to hire them. Like maybe this person doesn't have 3 to 5 years of account management experience, but they got this translatable experience. And so, you know, we're on the hunt, and you should all be on the hunt right now for good talent. I don't have a challenge finding work. I have a challenge finding people. And one of the things you asked about the job I went to earlier, and you probably all know these, you always have friends. I have a friend who is an architect. He works from home. He has 2 full-time jobs. Neither employer knows that he has another full-time job. And he's a consultant for 2 other architect firms. Kid's making like $600,000 a year. And so his wife no longer works, and they have a wonderful lifestyle. I have an account manager. She's been with me for 5 years. She just gave notice. I'm gonna miss her a great deal. But her husband works remotely in the IT industry. She is gonna go be a remote digital project manager. They're probably gonna drive around in a van some, or whatever the young people do, and work remotely, and she's never worked in the digital space, but he has. He's gonna help her. He has to work remotely IT, working in customer service. That's all she's done. They're gonna make a great team, helping each other with their careers. And that's the lifestyle that they've chosen. I have to create lifestyles in the agency that make people want to choose me.
Very interesting.
It's a great time to be in marriage counseling.
I'm over here just to switch gears.
Christina with Biddy, and I have a question for Design Zillas and Evoke. How do you deal with burnout from your employees, especially in a high creative capacity with the firms that you have that churn a lot of creative thinking and critical thinking? And because I know to the point of what other people are saying that they want higher pay for less work, it's because of that capacity of energy. So how are you combating that? And also, another question is, what's your thoughts on the 4-day work week as it's becoming a trend and people are more attracted to that?
I can go on the.
Take whichever one you want.
So we actually, for us, the growth path, we essentially have our benefits that they can unlock based on how long, you know, they continue to work with us. And at year 4, they are eligible to work 4 10s, or you know, work 4 days a week, 10 hours a day. And that was something new that we just rolled out this year. which has been a really exciting but yet challenging addition based on the role that the individual's in. You know, so for instance, an account manager doing this means that Friday, if that's the 5th day that they're taking off, isn't available to answer emails or, you know, have issues with clients reach out. So now we have to think about, you know, well, what does that mean for the rest of the team, and how do we build contingencies and policies around that? You know, so that, while it's very attractive, and I fully believe in the productivity capabilities that go with Core 10, I think there's certain roles that, frankly, just make it more complex and difficult to allow. And then on burnout, you know, yeah, that's real. I mean, that's real in any job, and especially when everybody's been, you know, working from home or going through the pandemic or the inflation or the schools and all the masks and everything else, right? It's real. And, you know, the environment that you create when they wake up and what they think about when coming to work, is this an experience that giving them support and positivity? Yeah, it's difficult. Yeah, it's hard work. Yeah, you're gonna bust your ass. But is it something that's inspiring them? Is it helping them actually feel fulfilled, you know, through all the uncertainties and everything else that they've got going on? So finding creative ways to support them in understanding the vision and the part they play in that. Vision casting is a huge part of all of our jobs, and ensuring that they understand where they fit into that picture. And yeah, we have fun and, you know, all sorts of different, I mean, we do weird stuff. I mean, we have like, you know, different Harry Potter houses that they're all part of, and all like fun, you know, things that just kind of help break up the day-to-day. So, you know, I wish there was an exact answer that I could give you to avoid burnout, but I just say understand it, embrace it, communicate with the employees, understand how to measure sentiment on how they're feeling and how they're doing, so you can get in front of that before it turns in, you know, to, you know, them.
That's real quick on burnout. So burnout is a realistic thing. It's not just in our industry, in the creative services industry. I get it because you got to be creative all the time. And be creative right now, right?
Yeah.
Be funny. The thing is that working from home creates it worse. Because the flexibility of a 4-day work week, or you're going to bill 40 hours over the work week. The thing is, if you're working from home, you never stop working. You don't. You might take an hour to do a load of laundry. You might take whatever. But the deal is it's always on your mind and always going. And someone said, I want to respond back in 15 minutes, and that's kind of what we try to strive for people to do. But the thing is that my people get burnt out because they're saying, I'm working so much more now that I'm working home. And they worked at the office. They came at 8:30, went home at 5:30. You know, they put the cap on the bottle from 8:30 to 5:30, and they went home. They had dinner with their family, and they enjoyed watching regular scheduled programming in the evenings instead of grabbing Netflix and binge watching stuff. That they had a routine, and there was a system and a boundary and lanes. And now they're working all the time. We understaff a little bit at our agency because we're a creative agency, you know, like Central. So we understaff, and we keep a litany of freelancers that specialize in different areas of creativity or SEO or social media. And we call on them on a project basis and bring them in. We have to keep adding catalysts into the group to kind of spark energy. If not, then all of our stuff will look exactly the same for every single client. And you out there in the industry who are hiring agencies, you'll be able to look at that work and go, that's Evo's work. Because all my stuff looks the same. So you gotta feel it.
We are about 5 minutes out from finishing. You get the next question, but I will say this. Your contact information is available. If there's going to be 75 other questions that aren't asked today, or you won't be able to engage them because folks have to leave and so on. So please reach out, send them an email and so on. Don't expect a 15-minute response, but give them some consideration, and I'm sure they will be happy to address those. Yes, ma'am.
I just wanted to address you. I'm Jana Shelfer. I'm a 3-time Paralympian, and a lot of people know me as Jana Banana from Real Radio 104.1. In 2015, I suffered burnout, and I went into a deep depression. I know a lot about this, and I've become an expert in this. In fact, this is what my company is about. It's called Living Lucky, and it's about finding gratitude. I've spent a lifetime learning how to communicate with audiences, and it wasn't until I became an expert in learning how to communicate with my emotions and my soul. And so I go into companies, this is my husband, he's a life coach. We go into companies, and we just spoke to Cargill 2 weeks ago. We go into companies, we do trainings, and we help not only motivate the employees, but we also help with what you call the reevaluation, we call company retention, because that's really what they're doing right now. People come to him and they call it the great resignation, but companies are trying to keep their employees right now, and it's about them feeling valued and feeling like they're being heard at work. So we help them communicate with their souls and their emotions, and we help them turn that into fuel. And so we help them transmute those emotions, that burnout, into fuel that help them exceed and excel at work. So I just wanted to bring that up.
That is a great thing. Love to talk to you afterwards. I'm sure you guys could connect. Craig, I'll give you the last question.
Okay, so here's the important thing. It sounds super awesome that you're going to pay me more to do less work or let me work from home. But you actually brought up the point that all employers have. Hey, I got a friend who has 2 full-time jobs and a consulting job. What that communicates to me as an employer is he's not doing any work for any of them hardly at all, and they're paying him crazy money. How do you guys actually confirm that the work from home people even work?
Good question. So in my firm, we monitor billable efficiency, and we monitor productivity, and we all have goals. And if you do your work really well and really fast, all you get is more work, right? So my team knows that they are task-driven, they're project-driven, and we have production managers, and my me team is all 15-year plus in the industry. We know how long it takes to get something done. So we assign a project to someone, and if they can get it done faster, we don't give them more work, we give them more time. They get more time off. I mean, I give them 40 hours worth of work, and if they can do it in 30, they do it in 30. And so they get 10 more hours off. But if they do it in 50, maybe we're just not a good fit for them. One of the things that I did want to stress on this is like, when you're out there as an employee, you're looking for people, set realistic expectations of what you're looking to hire and how long you're going to keep them. I heard someone say rocking chair, right? Rocking chair. We don't do that anymore. I know when I hire a social media community manager, he or she's going to be 22 to 24, 25 years old, and I'm going to keep them for a max of 3 years. I'm just not going to be able to hang on to them any longer. I pay them $38,000, $42,000 a year to be a community manager. They're going to sit around and post on Facebook and Instagram and do social media plans all the time. They're going to burn out. They're going to get tired of it. They're going to go on to the next stage in their career. So what we do, and there's no stage at my agency. I only have 30 people in Orlando. So there's no advancement. You can't go past community manager, maybe if you want to switch departments. So what we do is we do a thing called RAP, review, assess, and plan. Every 90 days, we review their last 90 days, we assess their current workload and everything, their environment, their benefits, everything. We plan for the next 90 days. That plan may not include Evoke. That may include that they're going to go start putting resumes out for someplace else. But we want to get as much juice out of that person as we can for the time they're here. And then we want to help them in their next phase of their career. We don't have unrealistic expectations that someone's going to retire with me. That being said, I've got 20-year people, and I'm a 20-year firm. So I've got people that have been around, but we knew that all along. So I think that you have to, when you bring on any new team member, giving them that offer letter, and then give them that promotion letter of how they get the next run. I think you have to be realistic with yourself of how long you're going to keep that person in that role. And you can't be sad when they leave. And quit saying that you're not going to train your people because they're going to leave anyway. The only thing worse than training your people and having them leave is not training them and having them stay. Because you have an untrained workforce, you get your ass kicked by everyone else.
That's a great point. That's a great point. Just to honor your time, first of all, thank everybody here. Sandy, Jessica, Nicole, Johnny, Andrew, Larry, thank you. Great job. The CEO Leadership Forum is here to help give information and share with CEOs in the Central Florida, all around great information, and also support the scholarship component for Valencia and give people an opportunity to meet other people that they will end up being great friends. So that's why we're here. We're glad you came. If folks want to stay, I would assume I'd have to talk to Nasser and get his okay, because he handles the butter. But you guys can stay, but we understand we asked till 10 o'clock, and you are free to leave. And thank you very much for coming. We appreciate it, and look out for our next invitation, because the events will only get better. Thank you.
Thanks.